Hi, this is part 2 of Chuk-Chuk's progress in his speech and expressive language. For this week, I want to talk about some other programs that may assist his acquisition of expressive language. And we've talked a lot about learning to learn skills. And in talking, there's a lot of also very important prerequisite skills to make this process a bit faster. And one of the things that we tried to really work on was around his waiting, because Chuk-Chuk was very keen and sometimes it becomes a bit too keen in copying what we say. So even before we have finished saying a sound, like we would say pa, before we have finished, he started to copy and say those sounds. And oftentimes it results in less accurate articulations because he wasn't really listening and he was too rushed in saying those sounds by himself. So one thing we tried to work on was around his ability to wait. So the ideal scenario will be we ask him to wait, and then we say a sound, and when we announce his turn, he's going to say those sounds at that time. But it's very difficult if we start straight away with verbal imitation task. So what we did first was an easier task, like non-verbal imitation task with objects. So it's easier for us to prompt because we're able to provide a little physical prompt, so we can put our hands out, and in case if he's trying to get started, we can gently stop him quite quickly. Once he has become quite good with waiting, we started to move on to more body actions, and we started to get him to wait before he started to copy what we did with our body. We started to get him to wait for oral motor imitation tasks and also with verbal imitation tasks. And in the video, you will see that Oscar holds up a letter card, and it's quite common for Chuk-Chuk to say the sound almost immediately. In those instances, Oscar gave him a very clear instruction for him to wait. So Oscar holds up the card, asks Chuk-Chuk to wait, and then Chuk-Chuk can only imitate or can only start to say those sounds after we say it's his turn. I think through these processes, we're able to shape a better learning habits. And what Chuk-Chuk needs to do is to wait, watch, and listen carefully before he started to say those sounds. And it helps a great deal with his articulations. As I've mentioned, we have started to use a lot of visual aids to assist Chuk-Chuk to produce different sounds. And the end game there was trying to get him to be able to say more sounds together. Eventually, we can put those sounds into blends. An example I've cited last time was with sand. In Cantonese, sa. So with s and r. And you need to say those sounds really quickly and fluently. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to eventually put up two cards. One is S and an A, and when he say sa, he's going to say sa, and he's going to say it quite quickly. Imagine if Chuk-Chuk needs to be able to say two sounds in a row. He needs to listen to us saying both sounds first, and when it's his turn, he's going to say those two sounds afterwards. And it requires ability to copy two actions in a row. And again, as with waiting, it's quite difficult for him to start copying two sounds at the moment. So we broke down the task and we started with copying two actions with objects. And it's much easier because it allows us to use different types of objects as a prompt. We can have something that's more contextual. For example, we can put a bread on top of a plate, and then we put the plate in the microwave oven. So it becomes quite easy for him to copy two actions because they are interrelated. And once he's able to get those concepts, we started to move on very quickly into actions that are not so contextually related. For example, I drink some water and then I go get a piece of tissue. So those two actions are not necessarily related in any sense. Once he's been pretty good with doing 2 actions in a row with objects, we start to move on to body actions. We start to move on to oral motor activities. For example, I'm going to do 2 things like oh, and he needs to do both after my demonstrations. So once he got there, it's quite easy for him to copy 2 sounds in a row. So that's what we've been able to achieve with this program.
係啦，啲面個嘴嘴住個鼻鼻一等嘅望清楚，冇嘢喎。好啦，咁你就等等喎，做呢個。對。好嘢喎，犀利喎，叻仔喎。好啦，就喺度啊，大家陣啦喎。啊，E，做你。啊，E，好犀利耶！
I'm trying to put myself in his shoes too, and if I'm learning Japanese, and which I'm not great at, if you ask me to learn Japanese the whole day, it will be an incredibly frustrating experience for me. So I'm trying to make saying different sounds and verbal imitation a more fun, interesting experience for Chuk-Chuk. So what we tried to do was trying to put those practices in play in singing songs, in different activities, which he enjoys.